At my father's funeral I expected grief, but instead I watched my mother holding hands with a man I'd never met. Later discovering he had been living with us in secret all along. I'm writing this at 3 am because sleep doesn't come anymore. Not since I realized I'd become the kind of man I used to despise. The kind who destroys everything good in his because he thinks he deserves better. The kind who mistakes attention for love and throws away a decade of devotion for a few stolen moments with someone who didn't even know my middle name. It started at Dad's funeral. Sarah had been my rock through everything. Holding me while I sobbed, handling the arrangements when I couldn't function, being the woman I should have married years ago but kept stalling on because I thought I had time. She wore that black dress I loved, the one that made her look elegant even when her eyes were red from crying with me. She held my hand during the service while I fell apart. But then I saw Mom. My grieving, devastated mother who'd been married to Dad for 38 years. She wasn't alone at the graveside. There was this man, maybe 55, salt and pepper hair, wearing a suit that looked expensive. He had his arm around her waist, not the polite support of a family friend, the intimate touch of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. I watched them walk to the car together, watched him open her door like he owned the gesture, watched her lean into him like muscle memory. Sarah was asking if I was okay, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the sound of everything I thought I knew about my family cracking apart. The man drove Mom's car. He knew where the keys were kept. He adjusted the mirrors like he'd sat in that seat before. Sarah and I followed in my car and I kept thinking, who there is this guy? The worst part wasn't the mystery. It was how natural they looked together. How right. At the house after the service, he moved through our kitchen like he'd been making coffee there for years. He knew where Mom kept the sugar. He knew she liked her coffee black after 2 p.m. He knew which cabinet had the good plates. Sarah kept squeezing my hand trying to ground me, but I was spiraling into something I didn't recognize. Mom. I finally cornered her in the hallway. Who is he? She looked at me with these tired, guilty eyes. David, honey, we need to talk. Today. At Dad's funeral. I was losing it and Sarah was right there watching me unravel. His name is Robert. We've been together for 3 years. 3 years. Dad had been sick for 2. Had been dying slowly while Mom was finding comfort in another man's arms. Had been asking me to visit more while she was building a whole secret. Together how? But I already knew. The way he touched her lower back. The way he handed her tissues before she asked. The way he knew exactly how much whiskey to pour her without being told. He's been staying here. In the guest room at first, but then. She couldn't finish but she didn't need to. I could see it in her face. In the way she kept glancing toward the stairs like she was protecting something precious there. Sarah was still holding my hand but I pulled away. I needed space to process this betrayal. This fundamental lie that had been living in my childhood home. My father had died not knowing his wife had moved on. Or maybe he had known. Maybe that's why he'd seemed so sad those last months. Why he'd kept asking me to promise to take care of Mom. How long has he been living here? Since last November. Dad had still been walking that. Still been trying to fix the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. Still been sleeping in the same bed he'd shared with Mom for decades. While she was planning her future with someone else. I left. I couldn't stay in that house with those people. Couldn't pretend to grieve properly while watching my mother's secret happiness bloom at my father's funeral. Sarah followed me out, asking questions I couldn't answer because I didn't understand what I just learned. We drove home in silence. Sarah made dinner while I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. She was being perfect again, patient and loving, giving me space to process. But something had shifted inside me. Watching my mother's deception, seeing how easy it was for someone to live 2 lives, it did something to my brain. If she could do it, if my moral, church-going, married for, mother could maintain a secret relationship for 3 years, then maybe the rules weren't as fixed as I'd thought. Maybe the promises we make aren't as binding as we pretend. Maybe everyone was just pretending to be more noble than they really were. That night, Sarah curled against me in bed, and for the first time in our relationship, her touch felt suffocating instead of comforting. She whispered that she loved me, that we'd get through this together, that family trauma was hard but we were strong. All the right words, all the things a devoted partner should say. But I kept thinking about how Robert looked at my mother. Like she was still a prize worth winning. Like she was exciting and new instead of familiar and safe. When had Sarah stopped looking at me like that? When had I stopped being something she wanted instead of something she was just used to having? I started resenting her perfection. Her unwavering support felt like a trap instead of a gift. She loved me so completely, so automatically, that it didn't feel earned anymore. It didn't feel special. It felt like the emotional equivalent of a participation trophy. The thought that would destroy everything came to me as she fell asleep. I wondered what it would feel like to be wanted by someone who didn't have to want me. Someone who chose me fresh instead of someone who was just keeping a promise she'd made years ago. I should have recognized that thought for what it was. The first in a dam that would eventually destroy everything downstream. But I was 28 and grieving and I mistook my trauma response for clarity. I had no idea I just planted the seed of the worst decision I'd ever make. 2 weeks after the funeral, I met Emma at a work happy hour. Sarah had been incredible about giving me space to grieve, which meant she wasn't there when Emma laughed at my joke about quarterly reports. She wasn't there when Emma touched my arm while she laughed, her fingers lingering just a second too long. She wasn't there when Emma looked at me like I was interesting instead of just familiar. Emma was 25, new to our marketing firm and everything Sarah wasn't. Where Sarah was steady and thoughtful, Emma was spontaneous and unpredictable. Where Sarah wore practical flats and kept her purse organized, Emma wore heels that clicked when she walked and had lipstick stains on her coffee cups. Where Sarah loved me with the comfortable certainty of someone who'd already decided I was worth keeping, Emma looked at me like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve. I told it was harmless. Just friendly coworker conversation. Just enjoying the attention of someone who didn't know all my flaws yet. Just feeling interesting again for a few minutes before going home to Sarah's patient perfect love. But I started staying later at work. Started finding excuses to walk by Emma's desk. Started suggesting we grab coffee to discuss projects that didn't really need discussing. I was careful. I wasn't technically doing anything wrong. I was just letting enjoy feeling wanted in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Sarah noticed, of course. She always noticed. Seem happier lately, she said one evening while making dinner. I'm glad you're feeling better after everything with Dad. Her smile was so genuine, so pleased that I was healing, that I felt sick. She thought my good mood was about grief recovery. She was proud of how I was handling things. She had no idea her boyfriend was getting high off another woman's attention. Work's been good, I said, which wasn't technically a lie. Emma had been very good. That night Emma texted me. Just work stuff at first, but then it shifted. Look stressed today. Everything okay? I should have ignored it. Should have kept the boundary clean. Instead, I found telling her about Dad, about Mom's secret boyfriend, about feeling like everything I'd believed about loyalty and commitment was a lie. She listened. She asked follow questions. She didn't try to fix me or give advice. She just witnessed my pain without trying to make it better. It was addictive. Sarah's love came with solutions. Emma's attention came with no strings attached. We started texting every day. Nothing inappropriate, just friendly conversation that gradually became more personal. She told me about her ex, about her family, about her dreams. I told her things I hadn't even told Sarah. It felt like I was discovering parts of I'd forgotten existed. The night everything changed, Sarah was at her book club. I was supposed to meet some college friends for drinks, but they canceled last minute. Emma texted asking if I wanted company. I'm making pasta and have way too much. I should have said no. Should have gone home to Sarah. Should have called my friends and made new plans. Instead, I drove to Emma's apartment. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, hair in a messy bun, looking more beautiful than Sarah had ever looked in her most careful outfits. The apartment smelled like garlic and something floral that might have been her shampoo. We ate pasta and drank too much red and talked about everything except why it was dangerous for me to be there. She put on music, some indie playlist that made everything feel like a movie scene. We ended on her couch, supposedly watching Netflix, but really just talking about in philosophy and whether people could really love the same person forever. Do you think parents were actually happy? She asked. Before Dad got sick, I mean. Like really happy or just comfortable? I thought about it. Tried to remember Mom and Dad together in their good years. Comfortable, I think. They stopped trying to impress each other a long time ago. That's sad, Emma said. I mean, comfortable is fine but don't want more than fine. Don't want someone to still think are amazing after they've seen all worse stuff. I looked at her, and she was looking at me and I realized we weren't talking about my parents anymore. We were talking about Sarah and me. About how Sarah loved me despite my flaws instead of because of my strengths. About how I'd stopped trying to be impressive because I knew she'd love me anyway. I think, I said, and my voice sounded strange. I think I've forgotten what it feels like to be chosen instead of just accepted. And Emma moved closer. Her being chosen right now. When she me I backed. When she led me to her bedroom, I followed. When she whispered that she'd been thinking about this for weeks, I told her I had too. I didn't think about Sarah waiting at home. I didn't think about the 10 years we'd built together. I didn't think about anything except how it felt to be wanted desperately instead of just loved dutifully. Afterward, lying in Emma's bed while she slept against my chest, I felt like I'd discovered fire. This was what I'd been missing. This electric, consuming want. This feeling of being irresistible to someone. This was what my mother had found with Robert. This was why people burned their lives down. I snuck out at 2 a.m. and drove home to Sarah, who was asleep in our bed, my pillow still fluffed and waiting for me. I showered carefully, washing away Emma's permanence of my betrayal. Sarah stirred when I got into bed. How were the guys? She asked sleepily. Good, I said. Sorry I'm so late. She mumbled something loving and curled against me, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. Knowing I just killed something precious and irreplaceable, knowing I was going to do it again. Because Emma texted the next morning, last night was perfect. When can I see again? And instead of ending it, instead of confessing to Sarah and begging forgiveness, instead of doing any of the right things, I texted back soon. I'd spent my whole believing I was a good man. That morning I learned I wasn't good at all. I was just a man who'd never been properly tempted. The affair lasted 4 months. 4 months of elaborate lies and careful scheduling and living 2 completely separate lives. I became an expert at deception, at compartmentalization, at looking Sarah in the eye and telling her I loved her while planning my next evening with Emma. Sarah started planning our wedding. She'd been dropping hints for years, but after Dad's funeral, she decided was too short to wait. She showed me ring catalogs and venue photos and talked about guest lists with this beautiful excitement that made me feel like a monster. But I couldn't stop. Emma made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. With her I was funny and spontaneous and interesting. With Sarah I was just David. Reliable, predictable David who took out the trash and paid bills on time and loved her with the steady, boring consistency of a man who'd already made his choice. The end came on a Tuesday. Sarah had been acting strange for days, quieter than usual, watching me with this careful expression I couldn't decode. I thought maybe she was stressed about work or her sister's divorce or any of the 100 small things that could upset someone. I was getting ready to leave for what I told her was a work dinner, but was actually a hotel room with Emma when Sarah said, David, can we talk? Something in her voice made my freeze. What's? She was holding her phone. Her hands were shaking. I got a call today. From someone named Emma. She wanted to know if we're really working late tomorrow night, because she was planning something special for 4-month anniversary. The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. Sarah, 4 months, David. She said 4 months. She was so excited. She wanted to make sure she had the timing right so wouldn't have to lie to girlfriend about where we're. Emma had called Sarah. Had somehow gotten her number and called to coordinate a surprise without realizing what she was destroying. The beautiful, impulsive spontaneity that I'd loved about her had just detonated our lives. She didn't know I was girlfriend. Sarah continued, and her voice was getting smaller. She thought I was sister or friend or someone who would help her plan something special for the man she's been sleeping with for 4 months. I wanted to lie. Wanted to deny everything. But Sarah was looking at me with this broken expression, and I realized she'd probably known for weeks. Had probably been hoping she was wrong. Had probably been waiting for me to confess or end it, or do anything that proved I still loved her enough to stop. Sarah, don't. She held her hand. Don't dare try to explain this. 4 months. I've been cheating on me for 4 months while I planned our wedding. While I comforted about father. While I supported through the hardest time in point, she was crying now, but quietly, like she was trying not to disturb the neighbors. Like even in her devastation, she was still thinking about being considerate. I loved completely. I would have done anything for her. I thought we're the best man I'd ever known, and been lying to my face for 4 months. I tried to touch her and she stepped back like I was. Get out. Sarah, please, let me explain. Explain what? How decided I wasn't enough. How chose to destroy everything we built because some girl at work made feel special. Explain how we're going to marry me while someone else. I'd never heard Sarah say the word before. It sounded wrong in her voice, like she was speaking a foreign language. Just tell me one thing, she said. When we're inside her, did think about me at all? Did remember that someone loved enough to plan their whole around, while we're throwing it away? I couldn't answer because the answer was no. When I was with Emma, I forgot Sarah existed. I forgot everything existed except the feeling of being wanted that desperately. Get out of my house, Sarah said again. Take whatever need tonight, I'll box the rest. I packed a bag and left the woman who'd loved me for 10 years sitting on our couch, crying into her hands. I drove to Emma's apartment, thinking maybe we could salvage something from the wreckage. Maybe this was just the push we needed to start our real together. Emma answered the door in her robe, and her face lit when she saw me. David, I thought weren't coming until later. Did get my surprise. I wanted to do something special for. Her smile faded. Who's Sarah? My girlfriend. The one I've been with for 10 years, the one I live with. Emma's face went white. Girlfriend? David told me we're single, said gotten out of a long relationship months ago. And there it was. The final lie. The one I told so easily I'd almost convinced it was true. Emma thought she was dating a single man. Sarah thought she was in love with a faithful boyfriend. I was the only one who knew the truth, and I'd been too cowardly to tell either of them. We're married, Emma whispered. Not married. But we live together. She was planning our wedding. Emma stepped back from the door. Oh my god, David, what have we been doing? I thought. I never would have if I'd known we're with someone. Wait, no, this is insane. I've been cheating on girlfriend with me, for 4 months. And I didn't even know. She started crying, and I realized I'd destroyed 2 women's lives with my selfishness. Emma wasn't a home wrecker. She was just a young woman who thought she was falling in love with an available man. I turned her into an accessory to betrayal without her consent. I can't do this. She said. I can't be with someone who would lie like this. Who would use me to someone else? God, that poor woman. She must me. Emma closed the door in my face, and I was alone in the hallway, homeless and girlfriendless and finally understanding the weight of what I'd done. I hadn't just cheated. I'd orchestrated an elaborate deception that had 2 innocent women who'd trusted me completely. I spent that night in a hotel room, staring at my phone, wanting to call Sarah but knowing I'd forfeited that right. Wanting to text Emma but understanding she never wanted to see me again. Wanting to undo the last 4 months but knowing that time only moved in one direction. The next morning, I drove back to get more of my things. Sarah wasn't there, but she'd left a note on the kitchen table next to 3 boxes of my stuff. David, I've been thinking all night about what I want to say to. I keep starting and stopping because every time I begin, I remember something else ruined. The way held me while I cried about father, knowing we're planning to see her later. The way let me plan our wedding while built a relationship with someone else. The way said love me every single day while proving didn't. I don't understand how could do this to us. I don't understand how could watch me love so completely while gave pieces of to someone else. I don't understand how could be so cruel while seeming so kind. I've taken name off the lease. I've cancelled the wedding venue. I've told my parents and my sister what did. Everyone knows David. Everyone knows what kind of man really are. Don't contact me. Don't try to explain or apologize or ask for forgiveness. Killed something beautiful, and I need to grieve it without having to see face. I hope she was worth it. The boxes contain 10 years of my photos of us together, gifts she'd given me, books I'd left on her nightstand, the spare key to her car. Everything that proved I'd once been loved completely by someone who deserved better. I was 28 years old, and I just learned the hardest lesson of my day. Some mistakes are too big to fix, and some betrayals too deep to heal. I traded the love of my for 4 months of feeling special and I'd lost both. That was 3 years ago. I'm writing this from a studio apartment across town, still single, still alone, still thinking about Sarah every day. Emma got transferred to another city. Sarah married a man who actually deserves her. And I learned that when destroy something real for something temporary, end with nothing at all. I'm 31 now and I haven't been on a second date in 3 years. Not because I don't want to, but because every woman I meet eventually asks about my longest relationship. And when I tell them about Sarah they want to know what happened. When I tell them the truth. Because I promised I'd stop lying. They all have the same look. Like they're seeing me clearly for the first time and don't like what they see. Cheated on her for 4 months, they say. While she was planning wedding. And then they find excuses to end the date early. I've become the cautionary tale women tell their friends about. The reason they trust slowly and watch for red flags. I'm living proof that a man can look completely normal while being capable of casual cruelty. Sarah's wedding photos showed on my Facebook feed last year before I finally blocked her completely. She looked radiant in a way I'd never seen, like she was glowing from the inside out. Her husband looked at her like she was a miracle he couldn't believe he'd been lucky enough to find. Like she was something precious he'd spend his protecting instead of something comfortable he'd taken for granted. I stared at those photos for hours, trying to remember if I'd ever looked at Sarah like that. Even in our early days, even when I thought I was head over heels in love with her, I don't think I ever looked at her like she was a miracle. I think I always looked at her like she was mine. Like she was guaranteed instead of gifted. That's the thing about taking someone for granted. Don't realize they're doing it until they're gone and are desperate to have them back. Don't understand that reliability isn't boring, it's rare. That being loved consistently isn't suffocating. It's sanctuary. The worst part isn't the loneliness, though that's brutal. The worst part isn't the guilt, though that's constant. The worst part is knowing exactly what I lost and why I lost it, and knowing I'd probably do it again if I were that version of. I've been to therapy. Dr. Martinez has helped me understand the psychology behind what I did, how my father's triggered something primal about mortality and meaning, how watching my mother's secret affair normalized deception in my brain, how I mistook Sarah's steady love for complacency instead of recognizing it as strength. But understanding doesn't equal forgiveness. Not from others, and especially not from. My mother married Robert 6 months after Dad's funeral. They had a small ceremony in her backyard, and she looked happier than I'd seen her in years. I was the only family member who attended. My sister Rebecca stopped speaking to Mom entirely after she found out about the affair. My brother James comes around for holidays but keeps things surface level. Or just like her, Rebecca said to me when she found out about Emma. Runs in the family, doesn't it? The ability to destroy people who love, and then move on like it was nothing. Well, she wasn't wrong. I was like Mom. We were both people who could compartmentalize our betrayals, who could look our partners in the eye while planning our exits, who could mistake convenience for love and excitement for connection. The difference is that Mom's story had a happy ending. She found someone who made her feel alive again after years of sleepwalking through marriage. Robert adores her. They travel together, laugh together, seem genuinely thrilled to be in each other's company. At 62 she'd found her soulmate. I'd had mine and thrown her away for 4 months of hotel rooms and text messages. Work became uncomfortable after Emma left. Everyone knew something had happened between us, and when Sarah stopped coming to company events, people started putting pieces together. I wasn't fired, but I wasn't promoted either. I became the guy I didn't trust with client dinners or business trips. The guy who might create HR incidents. I changed jobs eventually, but my reputation followed me. This industry is smaller than people think and gossip travels fast. I'm competent but not trustworthy. Professional but not reliable. The kind of employee keep at arm's length. Dating apps are brutal when honest about past. Women swipe left the moment they sense baggage. The ones who swipe right are usually carrying their own damage, looking for someone equally broken to make them feel normal. We go out a few times, compare our worst decisions, and realize we're both too messed to fix each other. I matched with a woman named Lisa last month who seemed different. She was divorced, had 2 kids, worked as a nurse. Real experience, not the naive optimism that would crumble the moment she learned who I really was. We had coffee, and it went well enough that she agreed to dinner. Over pasta she asked about my longest relationship. I told her about Sarah, about the 10 years, about how it ended. Cheetah said not a question, she said, for how long? 4 months. Lisa put down her fork. While she was planning wedding, yes, she was quiet for a long time, studying my face like she was memorizing it for a police lineup. My ex-husband had an affair, she said finally. 2 years. 2 years he looked me in the eye every morning and me goodbye before going to work, and his secretary. 2 years he came home to dinner and homework help and bedtime stories while texting her from our bathroom. 2 years he watched me blame for the distance I felt, watched me try harder to be a better wife, watched me make excuses for why he seemed so disconnected. My stomach dropped. Lisa, do you know what that does to someone? Loving someone completely while they're giving themselves to someone else. It doesn't just break heart. It breaks ability to trust own instincts, start questioning everything. Every gut feeling, every moment of doubt, every time something feels off. Because if couldn't tell partner was lying for 2 years, what else are missing? She stood. I spent 3 years in therapy learning to trust again. Learning that the problem wasn't that I wasn't enough. It was that he was a coward who took the easy way out instead of being honest about what he wanted. I know I was wrong. Don't know anything. Think no because feel guilty, but guilt isn't the same as understanding. If understood, never would have done it in the first place. Lisa left cash on the table and walked out, and I sat there alone with our half-eaten meals, understanding that this was my now. This would always be my. The moment people learned who I really was, they left. Not because they couldn't forgive cheating in the abstract, but because they couldn't trust someone who was capable of that level of sustained deception. I drove home to my empty apartment and looked at in the bathroom mirror. 31 years old, decent looking, good job, no criminal record, on paper as a catch, in reality I was radioactive. A walking reminder that nice guys can be monsters too. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Robert and I are planning a Christmas party. Hope can make it. Would love for to meet some of our friends. Our friends at 62. My mother was building a new social circle with her new husband, while I was burning through dating apps like a man running from a fire. She'd successfully reinvented herself. I was stuck being exactly who I'd always been, someone who made selfish choices and then felt bad about them afterward. I started typing a response, then stopped. What was I gonna say? That I couldn't handle watching her happiness when mine felt so impossible. That seeing her successful affair made my failed one feel even more pathetic. That I resented her for thriving after betrayal while I was drowning in the consequences of mine. Instead I put the phone down and poured a drink. Then another. Then I sat on my couch and did what I did most evenings, scrolled through social media, looking at other people's lives and wondering how they made love look so easy. Sarah's husband had posted a video of her laughing at something off camera. She was wearing a sweater I'd never seen, sitting in a kitchen I didn't recognize, looking more beautiful than she had the entire time I'd known her. The caption read, 10 months married and she still makes me feel like the luckiest man alive. 10 months, they'd been married 10 months, which meant they'd probably been together at least 2 years. Sarah had found someone new, fallen in love, gotten engaged, and built a hole while I was still to memories of Emma and wondering why nobody wanted to date a reformed cheater. The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations. Sarah's sister had written, so happy found someone who deserves. Sarah's mother had commented, beautiful inside and out. David is so lucky to have point David. Her husband's name was David too. Sarah had married another David, and this one was apparently worthy of the love I'd thrown away. I closed the app and finished my drink and went to bed alone, like I had every night for 3 years. Like I probably would every night for the rest of my. Because here's what they don't tell about being a cheater: the punishment never ends. Don't get to serve time and move on. Don't get to feel bad for a while and then be forgiven. Become someone different, permanently. Someone who can't be trusted. Someone whose word doesn't mean anything. Someone who has proven that their promises are negotiable. 3 years ago I was planning to propose to the love of my. Tonight I'm gonna fall asleep alone in a studio apartment, listening to my upstairs neighbor's TV through thin walls, knowing that this is what I chose when I chose Emma over Sarah. People always say cheating is about the cheater, not the relationship, and they're right. It wasn't about Sarah not being enough. It was about me being too weak to appreciate what I had until it was gone, too selfish to consider the consequences, too cowardly to end things honestly if I was that unhappy. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I thought I deserved better, and I've spent 3 years learning that I actually deserved much, much less. Sarah deserved a man who looked at her like a miracle instead of a guarantee. Emma deserved a man who would choose her honestly instead of steal moments with her in secret. I deserved exactly what I got: nothing. Some mistakes teach lessons can use to do better next time. This mistake taught me that some people don't get a next time. Some betrayals are too fundamental, too deep, reveal too much about who really are. Some prices are too high, and don't find out the cost until after I've already paid it. I thought love was about finding someone perfect for, but love is actually about becoming someone worthy of the person who chose. I learned that too late, and now I'm the man who had everything and chose nothing, sitting alone at 30, one with nothing but regret and the certain knowledge that I am living exactly that I earned. Tonight, like every night, I'll fall asleep wondering how David are doing, knowing that somewhere across town, a woman who used to love me completely is building a beautiful with someone who actually deserves her. While I lie here as a warning about what happens when mistake being wanted for being worthy.